All right, so we're going to talk about the pre-media paper. Remember, as is listed there on our course site, here is the overview. You should, and I know many of you have, but some of you haven't chosen all of them, you should be choosing your film and book reviews, because from here on out, there will be 10 papers due over the next, well, till April, whatever it is, till the end of the course anyway. And of course, you know, most of those films are an hour or two long. If you're reading a book, the length could vary, but you need to be choosing those. Email it to me. I'll put your selection in. One person per film or book or whatever. Okay, so that shouldn't be a problem. There's a lot of choices. And notice this is the guidelines. Reviews should be 625 words each. Well, that's just a guideline. You know, there's about 250 words per page, right? So 3 pages would be 700. So it's not very long. It's 2.5 to 3 pages long. But I just put the words down so that sometimes people like that better than the pages, because the pages can be manipulated in various ways. Double spaced, yeah. Yeah, double spaced. Well, if you just go with the words, you don't have to worry about it. But yes, I want your paper to be double spaced. Correct. All right. So the guidelines for these reviews, they should follow the outline. I've got that. We'll go over that in a moment. It's there. But it should be based on your viewing and or reading of the film and the book, and then also some additional research that you do. And I guess what I'm saying is, I don't, you know, it's not really a movie review. It's like, oh, I watched this movie, I really liked it, Tom Hanks is a genius, whatever. I don't want it sort of like a movie review, but I want you to be particularly looking at the historical part of the film. Was it accurate? Did it have characters in it that were real? And what was the context? This is also very important. So in other words, when was the film made? And what is it being made about? Were the events that are portrayed in the film or the book or whatever recent things, or were they things that happened a long time ago? What is the perspective? Because you know, a film or a book like this could in one sense be a primary source, perhaps, on events for history, potentially. Or it could be a secondary source. Or in fact, it might be both. What? Could it be both? I don't know. That's something to think about. So for example, if you watch the film Triumph of the Will, something filmed during the Nazi party rally in Germany, well, in many senses that's a primary source, because it is a film record of what happened, right? If you watch a film later on, let's say about the Holocaust, which goes to some of the camps or something, that's really a secondary source, because it's something it's talking about what had happened in the past. But either one of those is going to have a perspective, a point of view. So I want you to look at that and think about it. Think about the context of when it was made, who made it, why did they make it, did they have a sort of axe to grind, a sort of perspective, a point of view they're trying to get across? If they did, why? And if they did, and probably the answer to both of those is yes, they did have one, how well did they get that point across? And then if you remember, we had listed these things as guidelines. So what I don't want you to do, just to be clear, is I don't want you to just take these things that are here, put it in as a form, and just type in title, date, author, source, whatever. Make it like a list or something, a grid or something like that. No, I want you to actually write an essay, but make sure you address these things. You can address some other things too, but make sure you look at these things. For example, when was it produced? When did the events happen? Or did they happen? How great is the time difference? Are there any historical sources that are cited in the film or the book? Does the author, and who is the author? For most people, they would say that, you know, directors are sort of the author of the films. Well, not always the case, but often. Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is a graphic novel considered one of the books?
Yes. Graphic novel. You need to get 2 books. There are some graphic novels listed on the list. Those are fair games for books. Okay? Yeah. So normally if you look on the list, it'll say at the top films, and then it'll be a category called books. It's second. So you just need to make sure you get at least 2 books. But graphic novels do count, and in fact there are a couple of graphic novels there that I have assigned in other classes that you might have been in. That theoretically you've already read them. Like Perpetua's Journey, or what's that? Mouse. Yeah, Mouse in the Hitler and Holocaust class. I had a World War I class, but I don't think any of you were in that. And I had another graphic novel. I try to find some graphic novels when I can to sort of explore that avenue. Okay, so there's at least 3 or 4 graphic novels I've used in my classes that made the list, and then there's probably some other ones in there as well. Okay, so yes, they do count. All right, any questions about that? That's clear? Okay, due by Sunday night. All right. Here's the next thing I want to do then. This is the list that as it was, you know, just before class. So I want us to actually talk about these today. Well, I kind of want you to talk about the one you chose. So one of the questions I have is, why did you choose the one that you chose? And did you already know about it before you chose it, or you just chose it because it was on the list or whatever? So who wants to start? Taylor? Okay, go ahead. Taylor, what do you think? You chose The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Had you ever heard that song?
No.
You'd never heard the song. You saw it on the list. Why did you choose it?
So I went through a couple of them, the songs, to see if anything caught my ear, and it was one of the top 2. So I ended up choosing that. I figured no one else would think.
So you did it by just enjoying the music.
Right.
The
seeing
tune.
Which one I felt I would be drawn.
And what was your other top one?
Ohio.
Ohio. Somebody already chose that probably.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
All right. So The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Have you listened to it now?
yeah.
Okay. So you didn't know about the wreck. You didn't know who, maybe Edmund Fitzgerald was a guy and he got in a car wreck. You didn't know. So what did you find out about that? Did you think this is a historic sort of event?
Well, from what I understand, the song was written the year after a ship named Edmund Fitzgerald sunk on one of the Great Lakes.
Gitche Gumee,
Yes, on the Great Gitche Gumee.
Lake Superior. Yes.
In November.
When the November gales blow early.
Yeah, yeah. So, I haven't looked up research as to what parts of that song are historically accurate. I figured there are some parts such as, of course, the name, the time of the year, perhaps the climate at the time, the number of people that died are likely to have been released.
Sure.
And so that would have been known by Gordon Lightfoot when he's writing the song. Other parts of it, though, such as dialogue between different characters on the boat, would have likely be made up. It would be creative license there for the sake of the song.
Sure. Yeah, there is one little, they mentioned that they radioed in. I think they might have that. But, this event, like you said, was an event that had just happened. I mean, months before, maybe a year before. I can remember when the song came out. I had no idea what the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald was. Because even though I was alive when it wrecked, nobody heard about it. There are a lot of ships, this would be interesting to find out, there are a lot of ships who have wrecked in the Great Lakes over the years, but the only one that I can name is the Edmund Fitzgerald. Why? Because of this song. So, part of what you want to think about is how does a thing like this song or things in popular culture, poems and other things, how do they affect the way we think about history and what we know about history? In other words, had this song never been written, if Gordon Lightfoot had not written this song, probably none of us would know anything about the ship called the Edmund Fitzgerald, or even the fact that it had wrecked. So, those are things to think about. So some of these songs happen right very close to the events. Let's see, who had Ohio? That was you. That is also very, they wrote it almost immediately, shortly after, right? So did you choose that? You already knew the song?
I don't have my voice.
You have no voice today.
But I can't say I chose it because I like our house on Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Okay.
I recognize them. I just picked it.
Okay. All right. Her voice is gone. So yeah, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Of course, a very popular Gordon Lightfoot. Gordon Lightfoot is a Canadian hero. I mean, he's like one of the we don't maybe know about him as much in the United States, but in Canada, Gordon Lightfoot is a.
Disappearing out for a few seconds. Sorry, that was.
Gordon Lightfoot is a household name in Canada and a sort of a cultural icon, right? So the Canadians know a lot more about him than we do, although he's had some hits in the United States as well. But Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young have more hits. I mean, they're more famous, and they've had a lot more songs, albums, and so forth. Right, Our House, that's a very famous song by them. So you kind of chose it because you'd heard of them, you knew that song, you thought this might be an interesting song. So you didn't really know what the song was about. It could have been about a tourism song to get you to visit Ohio. Go to Cleveland, as we used to call it in Cincinnati, the mistake on the lake. The city where the river burns. Now, of course, I'm bringing up old stuff, but the river did catch on fire in Cleveland. Many years ago, they've tried to clean up their act, literally and physically. But anyway, yeah, what's it about? Well, it's about a shooting on the campus of Kent State University in Kent, Ohio. Okay, so that's really what it's about. So it's a protest song, Vietnam protest song, and sort of the students were protesting the war, and they went out and were doing a march, that kind of thing, protesting, and the governor called in the National Guard, put them on the campus, told them to keep the students out of the buildings, make sure nothing happened. Something happened, something got out of hand, and a National Guardsman shot several students. Well, in the course of it, there was, once there was a shot fired, then other people began to rush towards the soldiers. Then, so as one of the lines says in the song, 4 dead in Ohio. Okay? And so it's a protest song. And it came out shortly after the events happened. It was first performed at Woodstock. Well, maybe not first, but it definitely was performed at Woodstock. And it became a hit song for Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, protesting the Vietnam War, protesting the government reaction to people protesting, that sort of thing, right? So, but it's very quick. So these things that happen shortly thereafter, I suppose these two, like Ohio and the wreck of Edmund Fitzgerald, they're fairly accurate, I think, in their, what they're saying as far as when it happened and how many people died and all that sort of thing. But what's the motivation for it? Why did Gordon Lightfoot want to highlight the fact that this ship went down? I don't know. That's something to think about. I think Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young obviously saying, hey, see what the government does, see how they overreact, see how bad all this stuff is. And they want to publicize it because they had an audience, they had a voice, they could do that. So you'll find that some of these things are kind of protests, protest songs, or calling attention to recent events. Some of them are about social injustice. Some of them are just funny. You know, that's what I thought was interesting. Who did Mr. Custer? You did Mr. Custer. Okay. Did you know that song ahead of time?
I did not, but it was funny. I was playing it, and my mom overheard it, and apparently she had heard it before.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting because it's from 1960, and my mom wasn't even born in 1960. But I guess it's kind of a novelty song, so
It's a song that,
comes
yeah.
and goes in popularity.
Yes, it does. It could sort of reemerge, right? But so what's it about?
So it is the comical presentation of a soldier clinging to, as he says, Mr. Custer, to not have to fight in the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Yeah.
They're all slain.
So it's just so okay. So this is like not quite 100 years afterwards, right?
It is, according to this really strange Billboard article, 84 years,
84 years.
3 months, and 15 days.
Okay. Well, what I think is interesting is that it's a comedy about a massacre.
It is a comedy about a massacre.
Because I mean, the seventh Cavalry was
They all
wiped
died.
out, right?
They all died.
They all died. Hundreds of guys died.
About 700, I think is what it's.
Okay, 700, and but this is a comedy song. Now imagine if you wanted to make a comedy song about the Edmund Fitzgerald, or about what happened on Kent State. You know, oh please, Mr. Guardsman, don't shoot me, or something, or let's not protest, or please let's not take the ship out tonight, or something. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could try to do that, but it's just not going to work. So I'm kind of wondering if it's just the distance from it, the 80 years distance.
I think it is the 80-year distance, but at the same time, the article that was published,
Mhm.
like, I want to say, maybe a year or so after it went out,
Mhm.
had interviews with the individuals who wrote the song and were promoting it
Right.
to get it published. And it took them months, and they had to rewrite some things and take out some things because apparently they had taken the comedy too far, and they couldn't get it.
Okay.
They couldn't get it put out by any of the major record companies. They ended up having to go to this really small little independent
Right.
to get it put out. 'Cause
And it
some
became a
people did
big
not
hit.
some people did not see the comedy in it.
Yeah.
And,
Of course, I mean, we are now another, 60 years? We're another 60 years from when it was released. I guess that's right. Roughly. So now we are, 140 years from the events, roughly. You listen to it, and, I think it's got some humor in it. I think it's pretty funny. And basically the guy's saying, hey, don't send me out there. I don't want to go. And
I don't want to get scalped.
I don't want to get, he talks about being scalped, being shot with arrows. He said, you look out there, see those guys, they're going crazy like a bunch of wild Indians. And then he goes, oh, wait, not the time for comedy, not the time to be funny, right? Because they are wild, and, they are, so these Indians are going to try to kill me and scalp me. And he says, I don't want to be bald or shot with an arrow or something like that. So again, can we learn? I mean, I guess it's going to be pretty clear. I mean, that's a pretty famous event. Unlike the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which I don't think many people knew about. The shooting at Kent State, certainly people knew about. The Battle of Little Bighorn, I mean, most people who've taken an American history class have probably heard about it. But it is a different take on it. There were some songs at that time. Somebody didn't choose that one, did they? No, they didn't choose the Battle of New Orleans. That's a similar kind of thing. It's got a little bit of humor in it, and it's about the Battle of 1812, when the Battle of New Orleans, when they chased the bloody British to the banks of to New Orleans, down to the banks of the Gulf of Mexico and so forth. So there were some songs like that at the time in the early 60s. There was also the one, I don't know if we had it on the list, Snoopy and the Red Baron. You know, the Red Baron was a real person who shot down a lot of people, a German. And of course, in the comic strip, Snoopy would pretend to be a flying World War I plane. So somebody made a song about that as well. So it's interesting then to compare them. Events that are well known, events that are not that well known. And we'll come back to that if we have time, but think about why it was written, how it was written, and what impact it could make. I think the song Ohio, if you listen to sort of classic rock stations or something, that's going to probably turn up in the playlist every once in a while. Wreck-It the Edmund Fitzgerald maybe would show up occasionally because Gordon Lightfoot. Mr. Custer's probably not much on the radio rotation these days, right? But
It stayed on the top 5 for a week and then kind of fell down.
okay. But I think it sort of has a place because of the humor in it, and those kind of songs, once somebody hears them, they usually don't forget them because they're unique, Even if you can't remember all the words, you can't remember. You can't remember some of the tune. Please, Mister,
That one line.
Yeah, that's the one. I don't want to go. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the big line that he says. Please, Mr. Custer, I don't want to go. I don't want to go into this battle. And I when I first thought about it, I thought, if that was a bit later, you could actually kind of see it as a war protest song. A funny war protest song. Sort of like, I don't want to go to Vietnam, right? Or something like that. But this is really before that. This is 1960. So it's not, I don't think anybody's going to claim that that's what it was. There was no war on at that time. But that's the kind of thing you need to look at. Could they possibly be writing this as sort of a veiled protest? I think about the TV show MASH. Anybody watching, you know what I'm talking about when I say the TV show MASH? Well, there was a movie MASH as well. It's about the Korean War. You guys don't know that one, but it was on for a long time. But really, it was much more a Vietnam War protest film, but it was about the Korean War. And so they're protesting war and the absurdity of war and the way that the leaders, the generals and stuff, they really don't know what's going on. That was right in the heart of the Vietnam War era that sort of grew in popularity. And so many people see it as a kind of, certainly the movie was, when the first movie was made. So it was a way of sort of protesting the Vietnam War without ever even mentioning Vietnam. You see? Well, anyway. All right, let's see. Where are we at? Who did Hurricane? Okay, Hurricane. Now, why did you choose that? Did you know what that was about? Or you thought maybe it was about Florida getting a storm?
No, I actually seen the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, not too long ago, and
That has Denzel, right? Denzel Washington?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I never heard the song prior to seeing it, but once I looked it up, I've seen the connection between it.
Okay. So this is by somebody quite famous, Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan, of course, is sort of icon of the 60s, but he chose this as a to point out the injustice, right?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about who is Hurricane.
Hurricane is Reuben Carter, and he was a boxer at the time, and him and his friend was basically driving around where there was a shooting that happened in a bar not too far from where they were, and a few of the so-called witnesses pointed out that I guess it was 2 black guys in this type of car, and the police pulled them over and drove them back to the crime scene. They never took any type of DNA samples or anything. They just took them to jail, and they were convicted from there.
Okay. And what year? Do you remember what year this happened?
This was in 1966.
Yeah. Okay. So there probably, there wouldn't really been DNA testing back then, but like blood samples and things like that. All right. Yeah. So they were kind of railroaded on this conviction.
3 times.
Yeah. 3 times.
Right.
Yeah. Because they sort of redid it, right? And he got reconvicted. You know, Bob Dylan's song, I don't think was too long after the events, was it? This happened in 60s.
The song came out in 75. It was
Okay.
like around like his second or third conviction, but
Okay.
still, the song itself really just talks about the night at what actually happened at the bar, but it doesn't really talk about his entire life.
Okay. And so, but it is a kind of protest, right? I mean, it is a protest. It's supposed to highlight that this boxer, Hurricane, I mean, that was his sort of name as a boxer, is in jail now for something he didn't do. And even though people had called it up again, he keeps being put back into prison. He was finally released, though, right? Like in the 90s, I think.
No, it was still like late 70s after his third conviction.
Yeah.
He never actually went to jail.
He never actually went to
Well,
jail.
he was never actually convicted.
Okay.
He just kept putting him on trial and was holding him in jail.
Hold him in jail. He was okay. So he was being held in jail, awaiting trial and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay. But eventually he was acquitted.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I guess the question is, did Bob Dylan's song make any difference? And this is sort of this is one of the questions of these, and say documentaries and other things. Is highlighting this stuff actually going to change the outcome? What do you think? Do you think it had any effect at all?
It probably brought awareness because it was him and people like Muhammad Ali that was bringing attention to the situation.
Right.
But it was just the fact that they didn't have any evidence to really convict him.
Right.
And it had been almost 2 decades that he was in jail before.
Right.
He actually was released. So
Yeah. So he wasn't released till almost like 1990,
yeah, give or take.
something like that. So yeah, I mean, that's a long time. And actually to be held without a conviction, that's also very unusual, right? Well, I mean, certainly, I suppose it brought to some people's attention. I don't know if it changed. I mean, obviously it brought to people's attention. We're talking about it right now. Had Bob Dylan not written the song, maybe we wouldn't have had the film. That might have helped get the film made.
Well, he wrote a book while he was in there. He started basically writing
The film?
autobiography.
Oh, his autobiography, yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so then the film is made,
Yeah,
right?
that was made like 99.
Yeah.
So,
So, you know, I guess what I'm saying is the publicity from the song may have helped get the backing for the film.
yeah.
Maybe. But you don't know. At any rate, certainly we're still talking about it today. 40 some years later, or almost 50 years later, we're still talking about it. So, you know, this is the question. Does it make a difference? And had somebody else made the song, like if it wasn't Bob Dylan, Bob Dylan, of course, was famous. Somebody else had done it, would anybody had noticed the song? Because there are a lot of other protest songs that never really get popular. They never really get well known. Okay, let's move on. Let's see. We did Alice. Did we do Alice? Alice's Restaurant. Who did Alice's Restaurant? Oh, he's not here. Who did Longest Day? Oh, by Iron Maiden. Now, when you chose that, did you already know that song?
I actually did not listen to that song prior to picking that.
Why did you pick it?
Well, when I read the description, that hooked me into it, and how you described it, like, oh, this is the perspective of soldiers as they're entering the deep,
Right.
fighting the beach.
Right.
I thought, oh, this might be interesting to listen to. So
Well, so what did you think?
I think it's a pretty good song, and like I looked at the lyrics of it, and I'm like, wow, that's probably what they were thinking.
And I think if it wasn't for the title, I don't know if it would be that apparent exactly what it's about. I mean, if you know what it's about, and then you look at the lyrics or hear the song, then you can say, oh yeah, this is what they're talking about. But if they didn't have the title The Longest Day, which of course had been a movie, had that title, and it's a common reference to D-Day, I don't know if it'd be readily apparent that's what it was. You'd have to really think about it. So that's the other thing to think about is, is it clear from the lyrics or whatever, the film, what exactly they're describing? Because I think about, did somebody do American Pie? You did American Pie. Now, what is that about?
Good question.
Is that apparent? No, it's not that apparent. It's, there's all kinds of theories about that, right? So what are some of the theories about what it means? What do you think it means? You got any idea?
Well, from what I've managed to research, some believe it's a kind of an honor song, a song to honor the death of Buddy Holly.
Yes.
But apparently Don McLean himself said that he didn't want any one interpretation to be
Sure.
applied to this song.
Because it keeps you interested.
So from the man himself,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. He won't discuss it. He's famously not willing to explain it. And it's got a lot. I mean, the first part you can sort of figure out, okay, it's about the day the music died. It's about the plane wreck that took place there with Buddy Holly and those other singers on that plane in Iowa, by the way, I believe it was. We had another plane wreck in Iowa just the other day called a caucus. Anyway, still don't know what happened there. But then it goes on and it talks about, things descending from the sky and, and in fact, Charles Manson took the words from the song and interpreted them in the way he wanted to interpret them, which I don't know if that might be another reason Don McLean doesn't want to talk about the interpretation of the song. Helter Skelter in a summer swelter. And so in the summertime, one summer, Charlie Manson sent people to murder people. And he thought it would start race riots in Los Angeles and bring about a big race war. That was what he wanted. That's what Charlie Manson wanted. Well, there are more on. We didn't get to all of them. But be sure to get these in this time. Think about it. These are just some of the things to think about. What does it mean? Why was it written? How does it compare to other things? What was its influence? All those kinds of things. All right. We'll see you later.